Welcome to my channel. Story start. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I didn't want to believe it. She came home late that night. Her excuse? Rehearsed yet shaky work ran long, and the traffic was awful. I tried to push. The doubt aside, convincing. Myself it was. Nothing after all. We had been married for years. We had a routine, a rhythm. There was no way she'd risk what we had. No way she'd hurt me like that. But as the weeks passed, the signs became harder. To ignore the late nights increased her phone, never left her side. And when it buzzed, she'd glance at it with a fleeting smile and quickly set it down. She started picking fights over trivial things. Why I hadn't taken out the trash. Why I'd forgotten to buy milk, and then as those arguments as a reason to leave the house, slamming the door behind her. I just need some air, she'd say. But she'd be gone for hours. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that she was telling the truth, that these small, strange moments were just stir or bad timing. Told myself I was imagining things, that I was the one being irrational after all. Why would she lie? Why would she risk everything we had built together? Our home, our family, our life. Then one night it all came crashing down. I was in the kitchen, cleaning. Up after dinner when her phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the shower, and I wasn't intending to snoop. But the screen lit up with a message that made my heart stop. I miss you already. Last night. Was amazing. I stared at the words, my mind racing. Last night she had told me she was working late, that she had a last-minute meeting that couldn't wait. But this text, this wasn't from her boss or a colleague. It was from someone else, someone who had been with her while I was sitting at home waiting for her to come back. I picked up the phone and unlocked it. She had never felt the need to hide her passcode before. There it was, a string of messages between her and Anime. I didn't recognize the texts were intimate, playful, filled with inside jokes and references to places I knew she hadn't been with me. The more I scrolled, the more my stomach churned. There were photos, not explicit, but damning nonetheless. Pictures of her at a bar I'd never been to, smiling at someone who wasn't me. Pictures of her in the passenger seat of a car that wasn't ours. When she came out of the shower, I was still standing in the kitchen, her phone in my hand. She froze when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked, wrapping the towel tighter around herself. I held up the phone. "What's this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She glanced at the phone, then back at me. "I can explain," she said finally. But her voice lacked conviction. "Explain what?" I demanded, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Explain why you've been lying. Why you've been sneaking around. Who is he?" "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "It's just a friend. Someone I work with." I didn't mean for it to. "It's nothing. Nothing," I repeated, holding up the phone. "Again, this doesn't look like nothing. Last night was amazing. You've been meeting him while I'm at home waiting for you. How long has this been going on?" She looked away, her hands twisting the towel nervously. "I don't know," she admitted. A few months. My voice rose and she flinched. "You've been lying to me for months, and you think you can just brush it off as nothing. Do you have any idea what you've done, what you've destroyed?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. I felt like we weren't connecting anymore. Lonely, I spat the word, tasting bitter. "You felt lonely, so you decided to betray me, to lie to me." Over and over again she started crying, then her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she said through her sobs. "I'm so sorry." But her tears did nothing to lessen the pain. My chest, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had been lying to me for months. And now that the truth was out, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, needing air, needing space. I couldn't look at her, couldn't hear her. Apologies, couldn't think clearly. My world had been turned upside down, and the life I thought we had was gone. Hurley's had cost her everything we had built, everything we had shared. I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I even wanted to try. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there. Couldn't stay in the house where every room felt tainted by her betrayal when I left the house. That night I ended up ATA Motel H on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a cramped room with dim lighting, and a TV that barely worked, but it was a place to think, to breathe. I sat in the bed, staring at the wall, her words playing over and over in my head. I felt lonely. I didn't mean to hurt you. Lonely. What about me? I thought I wasn't exactly swimming in joy. Either life had thrown plenty of challenges our way, but instead I worked through the tough times. I showed up every single day. She didn't. She took the easy way out, finding comfort in someone else, instead of fixing what was broken between us. The next morning my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. Please come home so we can talk. I'll explain everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I didn't respond. Instead, I called a lawyer. It wasn't an easy decision. I'd always thought divorce was something other people went through. Not me, but how could I trust her again? How could I ever believe anything she said after months of lies? I returned home that afternoon, not to reconcile but to confront her. One last time. She was sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She stood when I entered, her face hopeful. I'm glad you're back, she said softly. We can fix this. We can't. Interrupted. You can say you're sorry all you want, but you can't undo what you did. You lied to me over and over. You made a choice, and now I'm making mine. Her face crumpled, and she sank back onto the couch. I'll do whatever it takes, she whispered. I'll cut him off. I'll go to counseling. Please, John. I'll prove to you that I can change. I shook my head. You should have thought about that before. You cheated before you lied. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed us. I left her, sitting there, crying into her hands, and walked into the bedroom to pack a bag. It was surreal, stuffing my clothes into a suitcase while the woman I'd planned to grow old with sobbed in the next room. But I knew it was the only way forward. I couldn't stay. I couldn't pretend everything would be okay over the next few weeks. I focused on taking the next steps. I met with the lawyer again, started moving my things into a small apartment across town, and tried to pick up the pieces of my life. She continued to send messages, each one more desperate than the last. I love you. Please let me prove it. Please give me another chance. I didn't reply. I didn't see the point. Her love, if it was ever real, wasn't enough to keep her faithful. It wasn't enough to stop her from lying. When I finally filed the divorce papers, it felt both painful and freeing. Painful because it was the end of a life I had fought so hard to build, and freeing because I was no longer bound to her lies. I was no longer the fool sitting at home waiting for a woman who didn't value what we had. The process wasn't easy. Splitting assets, dividing our lives, it all felt so cold and clinical, a far cry from the warmth and connection we once shared. But each meeting, each signature brought me closer to a clean break. And with each step, I began to feel lighter, like I was slowly shedding the weight of her betrayal in time. I started to rediscover who I was. Without her, I found joy in small things. Cooking a meal for myself, going for a long hike, spending an afternoon with friends. I even picked up an old hobby I hadn't touched in years, pouring my free time into something that was just mine. Slowly, but surely, I started to feel whole again. She reached out once more, months after the divorce was finalized. It was a long handwritten letter, delivered to my new apartment. In it, she apologized again, told me she had ended things with him, said she'd started therapy to understand why she made the choices as she did. She wrote that she still loved me, that she hoped one day I could forgive her. I folded the letter and set it aside. I wasn't angry any note at her, not at him, not at the situation. I'd let go of the bitterness, the pain to need for answers I'd never get. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. I knew I'd never go back, never give her another chance to hurt me. I had moved on, and I intended to keep moving forward. Looking back, her lies cost her everything: our marriage, our home, the life we were building together. But they also forced me to grow, to find strength. I didn't know I had to rebuild my life. On my own terms, it wasn't the ending he wanted, but it gave me the chance for a new beginning, one where I could live honestly, without doubt, and with the knowledge that I deserved better.